hell is this?
I don't know. I don't know why we're doing this. This is your fault.
Seriously, what is it?
So it's gin. It's a local Georgetown company. Actually, they're in Leander. So this is their barrel-aged gin. We got to try all their gins.
They had 2 gins.
Yeah, they had a couple. This was the most interesting because it was barrel-aged. So one may ask, what is gin, right?
Better than vodka.
Better than vodka. So what gin does, or what gin is when you distill, corn, rye, malted barley, whatever. When it comes off the still, it comes out as clear distillate.
Yes.
Right? It's basically, it looks just like vodka, but vodka differs because it has to be off the still at I think it's 190 proof for vodka. So for bourbon, those kinds of things, it has to come off the still at I think it has to come out less than 160 proof. Right? Now most bourbon people they're not doing that because you're stripping out flavor. So what they'll do a lot of times, especially with new distilleries, what they're going to do is once they get their bourbon barreled up, they got to sit.
Yeah.
And they got to wait years before that bourbon matures and they can blend it and then bottle it, right? So what they do a lot of times in the beginning is once they get their bourbon barreled, they got to find a way to make money, right? Because it's expensive to own rick houses and to buy distilling equipment and whatnot. So a lot of times they'll come out with a vodka, right? Because vodka is just corn for the most part. I mean, unless
it's new made.
Yeah, well, yeah, at a higher
additional steps.
Yeah, with additional steps. Or what they'll do is they'll come out with their own gin,
which is using their distillates.
Correct.
How do you make gin?
So basically, what you're going to do, there's a couple different ways of doing it. So you got the one way that a lot of people do it is on the side of the stills, they've got almost like a container that the distillate will then run through. And that's where they put their flavoring ingredients. So they'll put their junipers, their citrus, whatever they want their gin to taste
so
like.
The distillate gets pumped through.
It gets pumped through the flavoring ingredients.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's why bathtub gin was so big during Prohibition, because you could just leave distillate and
that's the other way to do it. Or you can have your distillate come out, and then you've got a big vat of it, and then you can put your whatever flavoring ingredients you want. Imagine like in a cheesecloth type thing, right? Where you can bundle it up, you got all these things, you throw those in there, you let it sit for however long you want to let it sit, and then when it tastes like what you want it to taste, you shit can the flavoring ingredients, and now you've got gin, right? And so gins can taste wildly different, so they don't all have to taste like juniper.
But most of the ones from Britain will.
Correct, because that's a popular ingredient because it grows everywhere.
In fact, this one has quite a bit of
Yeah. So this gin, what they did with this is because we tried the regular stuff, and when it comes off and then they bottle the regular gin, what they did with this, which is why it's the color it is they actually put this in used bourbon barrels.
Yes.
Right. So they let it sit. The little girl didn't tell me how long it sat for.
I don't think she knew how long.
Probably not. But now this is just drinking it neat. Typical gins, right? You're going to mix it with tonic. You're going to mix it with, with vermouth, and you're going to make like what you like, or gin martinis.
Or if Mr. Churchill is to be believed, the only amount of vermouth you need in a martini is staring vaguely in the direction of France while mixing the cocktail.
So that's a great example. Like you and I, you're my son. I had a drink of your martini. I'm like, okay, it's fine. I'm not a vermouth guy. I would just rather drink it neat, or
Indeed.
I would rather, like for a summertime drink, have a nice gin and tonic.
Whereas I don't really like gin and tonics. Gin and tonics are fine, but
yeah. This to me this was the most interesting thing at that distillery.
It was the most interesting thing. God bless them. They were a little too proud of their blended whiskey, or their charcoal filtered whiskey.
Yeah. Well, we won't go into that, but
I don't know what this
you still. I mean, that to me. Tell me if I'm wrong. Ton of citrus.
A lot of citrus.
right? It's a very citrus forward gin.
I'd imagine they use a lot of orange peel as their flavoring ingredient.
And that's the beauty with gin. So I don't drink a lot of it, but that's the fun part about learning about distillation and stuff is that you can do this at home. Like that's the cool thing.
Don't tell the TTB if you're doing it.
Well, just don't sell it. Right? So they actually sell like home gin kits.
They do. Yeah.
So you can get like a mason jar and get
That's what those crazy moonshiners do on.
It's
the same. So producing gin is the same idea as moonshine, eh? Or
it's
similar.
It's the same. The process of distillation is the exact same. It's just what grains or what are you using, right? Most people that have distilleries in the state, they're using corn, because it's inexpensive and it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So you distill, ferment it, pump it into your still, you're getting alcohol coming out the other end. If you're not going over 190 proof, then it can't be considered vodka. So if it's under that, then whatever you want to flavor that with is up to you. And then I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is cask strength.
It is. 117
Yeah.
something.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 117. Yep. Just says distilled from grain, but I'm gonna guess it's probably just mostly, new make corn.
Definitely.
And then they add their flavoring to it. But like I was saying, there are kits online you can get like with mason jars, and just buy. I mean, if you're gonna do it, like spend the money, get a decent vodka. I'd probably get one if you can find one that's over 80 proof.
Oh, definitely.
I wouldn't use Everclear because that stuff
that's a little aggressive.
That's brutal. But you can.
It's like using rubbing alcohol.
Yeah, but you can buy these kits. You can then pour it in the mason jar, and then they have like all sorts of stuff. So they have juniper, they have orange peel, lemon zest.
That sounds fun.
And then you can just kind of make your own, right? Let it sit for however long you want to let it sit for. Taste it as you go through it, and then next thing you know, you got your own homemade gin that you did yourself. Which
you can feel like a bootlegger from the 20s.
Yeah, like I said, just don't sell it,
Of course.
because that's where the TTB or the law doesn't like that.
You think the TTB won't catch up to you? Wrong.
Yeah, wrong. Yeah, they will.
They will. The taxman always gets his due.
Somebody will. But yeah, this is probably, other than Hendrix.
And Hendrix is a very cucumber forward.
For me, yeah.
For their standard offering, and they have a lot of other interesting varieties.
Yeah.
Big fan of Hendrix. Love Hendrix. It was my introduction to gin, thanks to you drinking that and tonic water by Pool.
Yep.
And everyone commenting
How healthy I was.
you were drinking cucumber water.
Because I was drinking cucumber water. But yeah, that's the fun one. So like even when when you go with like Bombay or Tanqueray, you're gonna get your normal juniper flavors. But the cool thing, like with a Hendrix, especially just the standard one, there's a lot less of the juniper, a lot more of cucumber, right? So if you make a gin and tonic with that, instead of throwing a lime in there like you traditionally do with the gin and tonic, you throw a couple slices of cucumber. Yeah, and then
deceive neighborhood moms into believing you're drinking.
Yeah, when you're at the pool and you can't have booze there. Yeah.
I happen to really like that juniper notes. And
I do too.
Beefeater, I think has been the most juniper forward gin that I've ever had. I don't know of any others that are that juniper forward. Like Forge gin leans much more on the citrusy notes, even though it does have juniper in there.
Correct. Yeah, and that just depends on the distillery.
Yeah, it depends
what they're wanting to put out.
Depends on how they want to flavor the gin.
Yeah.
It depends on what market they're trying to appeal to the gin to.
So when I worked at the store, the interesting thing about gins that I found was that nowadays they're not just making gin with your junipers or like Hendrix, like a cucumber flavored. Like they've got strawberry stuff. They're really trying to think outside the box. And then even something like this where it's then barrel aged. It's like, oh crap, 10, 20 years ago, nobody thought about taking a gin and sticking it in a used whiskey barrel. Like, that doesn't make any sense. But come to find out, it gives it some depth and some body.
Yes.
And they're doing the same thing in tequila. It's really cool. Like I said, for me, gin's more of a summertime thing.
Indeed.
But
as the as the pretentious one between the two of us, I do quite like martinis. Big
Yeah.
fan of martinis.
Yeah.
They're delicious.
Yeah, well, I'll let you drink them and I'll drink my gin neat.